Can everybody hear me? Yes. Perfect. That's what I like to hear. So good evening. My name is Eric Swanson, and I'm the Executive Director of Historic Waco. We are so excited to present our fall lecture discussing William Brann and the Iconoclast. Waco is a city that has had a plethora of strong personalities, and Brann was certainly one of them. We are lucky to actually be joined here tonight with a descendant of William Brann, Dr. Donald Brann, and his wife, Sari. So if the lecture here tonight interests you, and I encourage you to join us Saturday at the McCullough House, because we're going to debut a brand new event called Deaths and Legends. So guests will take a roughly 30-minute tour of the house, and it's full of Waco tales that are famous, infamous, such as this one, and strange. So the event runs from 6 to 9. You can purchase tickets online or actually just right at the house. Before we go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the staff and volunteers of Historic Waco. If you are a staff member or volunteer, can you also please stand up? Looking at you too. Everyone else. So these are truly the people that make events like this happen. I really don't do a lot of the work. I just come up here and I give the speeches and it's great. Like, these are the people behind the scenes who really put their hearts into events such as these. And if you want to join these intrepid group of individuals, we also encourage you to either become a member of Historic Waco or also join us and be a volunteer. I also want to thank the sponsor of this lecture, the McLennan County Historical Commission, because without their support, again, events like this wouldn't be possible. We actually have a videographer here who's going to record this lecture, so if you missed out or if you want to relive your favorite highlights, you have Ronald Half to thank, so thank you, Ronald, for this. And so now, without further ado, the guest lecturer. Our guest lecturer this evening is Bradley T. Turner. Brad is a 7th-generation Wacoan who primarily works at McLennan Community College as a professor of environmental science. He's married to Andrea, also a local, and together they have 2 daughters, Jolie and Rachel. Brad holds degrees from McLennan Community College, the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, Mississippi State University, and Baylor University in history, political science, environmental studies, and environmental geosciences. Brad is busy. Brad also serves as a member of the Hewitt City Council and has published several books in different fields. He greatly enjoys playing music and spending time exploring with the people he loves. So after Brad's done speaking, he's going to be open for additional questions. He's also going to be joined by Dr. Brann. And at the very end, we have food outside. And then also, thanks to David Lentz in the Red Men Museum, there are 2 of the guns that we're actually going to be discussing this evening. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Brad Turner.
I appreciate that. Hey y'all! Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I am excited and nervous at the same time to be here. First thing I must warn you is that I do not like to stand still. I don't even try to stand behind the podium, hence why I needed a wireless mic. I will be here and there, so yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate a pivoting ball joint on top of a tripod. So, okay, the troll apostle, William Cowpers Brann. Now, I gotta begin by saying there's a good chance that I have a very educated audience in dealing with this topic. Because really, when it comes to Waco history and local things and controversy, Brann's name often comes up. It's one of the first ones I remember learning about as a little kid, going into Oakwood and my dad pointing over on the right and saying like, oh yeah, that's where Brann's buried. So, as I got older and I started learning more and more about Waco history, I started learning different names for him, like that he was the apostle, the iconoclast, things like that. So for this lecture, I decided, really based on what I know, I think the troll apostle is the best way to begin. So I did what anybody would do. I went to Meta AI and asked it to draw me a picture of what a troll apostle looks like. I said he needs to wear a tuxedo with a little bow tie. And I said, what does a troll apostle, like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? Well, according to AI, this is what a troll apostle looks like. I want to start by asking you, though, what is a troll? What's that? Okay, they can live under bridges. They can be on Monty Python. They can also, on the internet, on good old Facebook, or wherever, behind a keyboard, what does a troll do? Huh? They instigate. They start trouble. What they love to do is fight. It doesn't matter what you say. You can type, the sky is blue, and a troll will say, not at night. Right? A troll loves to fight. A troll lives for the fight. That's what they want. That's all they do. Because they know the more rise they can get out of you, the more power they have. Well, since I'm dealing with a largely, I figure most of you educated audience on this, I thought what we would do is join our regularly scheduled program already in progress. It's November 1894. William Cowpers Brann, pictured right. AI did not draw this picture. William Cowpers Brann and his surviving family of 4 moved to Waco, Texas. And when he shows up, he has virtually nothing. He doesn't have any money. He has failed at pretty much every single thing he has done or dealt with. And he moves to take an editorial position at the Waco Daily News, which isn't the most glamorous gig, but it's a gig. And what makes it also kind of a big deal is the fact that he really struggles to get work anywhere else. You may find this hard to believe, but at times he's difficult to work with. And he can't really keep that steady job. He can't keep a steady income. But it's an editorial position, which he feels is more of his rank. And he shows up. One of his biggest problems is he doesn't like working for people who he thinks aren't as smart as him. Familiar with the 48 rules of power? Rule number 1, never outshine the master. Brann obviously did not know that and had no problems with pushing back. In February of 1895, he begins to publish the iconoclast again. Again being the key thing. Don't worry, we'll get back to that. And he starts to use what I call the shotgun approach. He takes shots at everybody. The idea is anything that bothers him, anything that comes across his mind, he writes about and he publishes. Because just like a good troll, the troll only has power if he gets a response, right? The troll only has power if he gets a response, and boy, howdy does he get a response. He uses what I call the shotgun approach. What's the difference between a shotgun and a rifle? Why is it when you go dove hunting you don't take a rifle? Or if you're like Annie Oakley, you would, but if you're like anyone else, why would you use a shotgun? Scatters, that's right. You use buckshot, you use birdshot. Whenever you fire it, you hit a wide target. You hope to hit something. He uses the shotgun approach. And he starts writing about all kinds of stuff. And one of his favorite topics, click, are Waco Baptists. Yeah, see, look, you start laughing too, don't you? You already know. You already know. It's been 130 years. You still laugh about it. Waco Baptists. This is a picture that I borrowed from the internet. It's cited down at the bottom. That I borrowed from the internet that is of a Cotton Pals parade in 1894. So this is Brann's Waco right there. And one of the things that he loves in his new little journal that he does on the side, it's his side gig where he moonlights. He still edits for the Waco Daily News, but one of his favorite things is to start publishing. And so he starts publishing about Baptists. And soon this catches the ear of Thomas DeWitt Talmage, who at this time reads some of Brann's writings that are against the Baptists and certain religions and says, well, he's nothing more than an apostle of the devil. What which is like rocket fuel for a troll. You hear that? I'm the apostle of the devil. In fact, you know what? From this point forward, I'll go by the apostle. And he does. Brann starts writing and using that to sign off on everything. The apostle. The apostle. Who is he? He's the apostle. The apostle of the devil is what Talmud says. To which Brann responds that Talmud is a wide-lipped blatherskite, a religious faker. Okay, I don't know about you, but I had never heard blatherskite in my life. I'm sorry. I had never heard the word blatherskite. Well, that's out. So I went and I looked it up. Blatherskite, which any good Brann writing, about every second to third sentence I have to go look up. I do. Since my audio's out, how are y'all doing? Yeah, I know. Yeah, if y'all want, you can move forward if you're able to. Or if not, I can walk up and down the aisle. Just don't think I'm getting married. Cool? So again, I had to go and look up what the word blatherskite meant. Oh, and it's totally dead down here. Like, it's just totally gone.
Can you use the one off the podium?
Oh, like a Beastie Boy. Yeah, I can try. Like this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel like I'm in a rap battle now. That seems appropriate, doesn't it? Yes, ma'am, I'll be happy to. But you gotta hold it up if you want to look cool. Blatherskite. Again, I had to go and look this up. I had never heard this word in my entire life. And I mean, that doesn't really mean much. I mean, a person who talks at great length without making much sense. Why are you laughing? Just so you don't feel that I am a wide-lipped blatherskite. Anyway, I had to go look it up, and I was like, what is a blatherskite anyway? And click. Brann has all kinds of fun topics of interest, things that he really wants to write about. Here are some of them. Women's wickedness. The buck Negro. Oh yeah, you know. Balaam's ass. Income tax decision. Apostle versus pagan. Wonder who that's about. Age of consent. Cash versus coin. Old veterans. And of course, Joseph Slattery and the American Protective Association. I went to Google and I typed Joseph Slattery. When I did, I got a couple of images of the guy. This is one on the left. Wow, what a great picture of a guy. Not really, I mean, it's... But Brann, again, uses that shotgun approach. He gets some pushback with Talmud. He gets coined as the apostle of the devil. He starts using that. And again, the way you legitimize criticism is through response. Well, it becomes a pretty big deal. In fact, as you're well aware, if you know anything about Brann's story, Slattery was an ex-priest. Just very quickly, Slattery was an ex-priest who was invited to come speak. He had done these, they had the American Protective Association had nearly 2.5 million members, and he'd go on speaking tours all across the United States. He would talk about things that were anti-Catholic, and he said that there was a Catholic conspiracy. He said that Rome wanted to overthrow the United States, and he married an ex-nun, and he'd say, I personally have seen these documents. I know what they're about. And Brann thought that he was just a complete liar. And he calls him out on it. He goes to the iconoclast and he starts writing, saying like, Slattery, well, this is a response. I'll read it in just a second. He says that Slattery doesn't know what he's talking about, more or less. I can't say it nearly as well as he does. You can go read it though. It's all public domain online. And Slattery is talking at Garland's Opera House, and he's there in downtown Waco giving a speech, and Brann's up in the balcony. And out of nowhere, Slattery begins in his speech to talk about, brothers, you have one among you You have one among you who's the apostle of the devil. One among you who is like, who you need to sort of guard from or whatever. And Brann stands up. He's there. And the first thing Brann feels like is, wait, you read the Iconoclast? I mean, he's only been writing this thing for a couple of months, and here's this speaker who's been invited all over the country, who's been brought in, who's been paid to come in, who has authority, who's standing behind the pulpit and talking about how awful things are, and he's read Brann's Iconoclast? This would be like me having my own side paper and people read it. Well, Brann's like, and he stands up in the balcony and he starts debating him right there. Back and forth. They go back and forth. And Slattery's like, wow, well, if I'd have known this was going to be a debate, I'd have charged double. Brann pushes back. And what ends up happening? They end up saying, kick him out. Get him out of here. Get Brann out of here. They're in his gray suit. And Brann does. He says, fine, I'll leave. He leaves. And as he gets to the door, whenever he's leaving and being shoved out by all the good Baptists of Waco, he stops. Blows a kiss. Walks out. This is Brann's introduction to Waco, Texas. And he's suddenly on the map. In his next edition of the Iconoclast, he says, merciful God, if heaven is filled with such Christians, send me to hell with those whose sins are inhuman. Better everlasting life in a lake of fire than enforced companionship in paradise for 1 hour with the foul-mouthed harpies that groaned all moon. Slattery's infamous utterances. God of Israel, to think those unmanly scabs, those psalm-singing vultures are Americans and our political brethren. That's essentially 2 sentences from Brann's Iconoclast about Slattery, and he publishes pages. Jet fuel. Jet fuel to the ego. Suddenly, 6 months ago, he's penniless. He's showing up for a job he thinks is beneath him. And now, the main speaker is reading his stuff. Everyone knows who he is. Boom. Now's the time to strike. Summer 1895. He's lived in Waco about 9 months, and everyone knows who he is. He's blasted onto the local radar for Slattery, and he remains very proud of his work. Because again, it's actually working. He's getting traction. The first time he's done this, it failed. We'll talk about that. But meanwhile, across town, oh, you know what's coming next. I hope. Dude, hold up. There he is. His ghost didn't want you to see his picture up there. Rufus Burleson. That's right, I heard y'all laugh at that too. But you know what's coming now, don't you? Yeah, you do. Rufus Burleson, president of Baylor University. Across town, is doing what Rufus Burleson does. He is leading the college. He is the preacher at the First Baptist Church of Waco. He's doing what all the good things that Rufus Burleson does. And in the process, he also is helping other people learn to be missionaries. One that he had become acquainted with through friends was, the Teixeira family. Now this is, I got this also offline, believed to be a portrait of Antonio. No, that's not a typo. For all you nerds out there who know what I'm talking about, Antonio Teixeira and his family. Antonio is working as a Baptist missionary in Brazil, and he's doing his best. He's getting funds and things, but he passes away, and his daughter Antonia is invited to come to Baylor to learn how to be a missionary. She's young. She's an early teen. Maybe 12, 13. She's young at the time, and she's invited to come and stay at Rufus Burleson's house to learn how to become a missionary. Now, real quick though, I will admit, I had no idea how to pronounce that last name 3 days ago. I'm just being honest with you. So I sent a message to one of my fellow faculty at NCC and asked them, Amber Bracken, and asked them, how do you pronounce this name? It's Portuguese. So she sent me back a sound clip and a video of how to pronounce it. So let's all say it together. Teixeira. Teixeira. And then kind of roll it like you're fancy. Teixeira. I will admit to you, I did not know how to pronounce it, and I wanted to make sure I did it right. I want to do right by the people we talk about. Teixeira. Teixeira. So one more time. Teixeira. Yeah, because again, I had no idea how to say that. And now you know how to say it. Teixeira. Teixeira. Okay. So Antonia.
Teixeira.
Yes! I like y'all. I like y'all. All right. She's staying at the Burleson's home. And again, there's a lot to this story that we're not going to totally dive into. She's working more or less as like a housekeeper sort of thing there. Her tuition is being paid by different people associated with Baylor. And she becomes a target, very, very much uninvited, young teenage girl becomes a target of Burleson's son-in-law's brother, who sexually assaults her on multiple occasions. And she becomes pregnant. We're talking about 13 years old, young, and it leads to a trial. His name is Steen Morris. Steen Morris is, again, Burleson's son-in-law's brother. And he's an older guy. He's in late 20s, early 30s. He even goes and gets married and comes back, still assaults her. Again, it's a very graphic story. I'll talk about that in just a second. But what ends up happening is Burleson's wife, Burleson's wife comes back and describes her as being boy crazy. Says that, no, she's not who we thought she would. She'd steal from us, and there's all kinds of other things too, kind of defaming who the girl was, this orphan who had come from Brazil to stay with them. And a few months later, she gives birth to a very white 3-pound baby who doesn't survive. The trial of Steen Morris takes over a year to go into place. She later kind of changes her official statement with pressure and more or less disappears at that time. The story of this is extremely graphic, extremely disturbing, and I highly recommend this book. It came out last year. In about August or September of 2023. The authors are both local. Remembering Antonia. Yes! Keeping y'all on your toes a little bit. Remembering Antonia Teixeira. Now, Brann gets a hold of this, and he just latches on like a pit bull. Because here's this Baptist institution that's supposed to be talking about all these ways of showing love and evangelical approach and all these different things. And yet, when a girl comes and stays in the president's house and is sexually assaulted multiple times, she gets kicked out on the street. She's discredited. She's abandoned. And Brann begins to just completely roast the Baylor administration. He completely roasts anyone really associated with Baylor and the university, which makes, believe it or not, a lot of people really mad. Because for one thing, Steen Morris had nothing to do with Baylor. Steen Morris was the son-in-law of the president who was there, but Steen Morris wasn't associated directly with Baylor. Now, Antonia was. But Brann launches into it for how the admin handled her, how they kick her out, how they expel her, she really becomes this sort of target on everything. So, he repeatedly publishes these different articles that sort of expose this hypocrisy. And anyway, it becomes his primary fuel, his fire that he really just tears into. And this is where the iconoclast gains all of its following. This is where it sort of begins to reach that full mythic level legend that we know it as. Well, there we go. In the summer of 1897, again, we skip around a little bit because I'm trying to bring you up to speed, because don't worry, I got a lot of other stuff to go over. Yes, okay. So, Brann continues to attack Baylor and the admin, and when students return in 1897, they're not very happy about this. So what do? They hatch a plot to kidnap him. At least a couple of fraternities do. They show up, and they decide, we're going to teach this guy a lesson, because that's exactly what teenage boys would do, right? I don't know. I mean, I've watched E.T. and they try to beat him up, but it's like, I don't know. They show up, and when they do, they decide that they're going to kidnap him, they're going to beat him, convince him to quit riding, run him out of town on a rail. And they do. On the 1st of October, a group of Baylor students catch him off guard. They kidnap him at gunpoint. They take him, they take his revolver, they take him across town where they plan to tar and feather him right there on campus and potentially lynch him. Only it's at that point that he instead is stopped. He's nearly murdered, but they instead stop. Some faculty and different authorities get involved and say, no, don't. Let's not do this. Though later conflicting accounts come out as to which faculty said what and who was trying to shield him or not shield him or this or that. So it's funny, 30 years later, everybody's kind of getting fuzzy on what happened to Brann that day. But instead, he's like, fine. I'll sign a piece of paper that says I'll leave town. That'll work. Or at least we'll make him do that. And Brann's like, fine. You know, he's all beat up and bloody. He's half unconscious. Fine. He scribbles the name Brann down. They send him off, laughing at him. He goes home. Well, as an olive branch, Brann decides, I'm not going to press charges. He's like, this whole thing's getting way out of hand. I'm not going to press any charges against them, but instead, what I'm going to do is just not focus as much on Baylor, which he still does, but we're not going to focus as much on Baylor as an olive branch. I won't press any charges about it. Let's just kind of bury the hatchet. But threats continue, and a couple of days later, one of the big corn-fed boys shows up to try again. They beat him up. He's like, you wouldn't leave town, would you? They beat him up again, but Brann rides away, saying, truth will rise, truth will rise. You can knock it to earth, but truth will rise again. Who says that? Like, seriously, who says that? If you are beating me to within an inch of my life, I'm not going to say truth will rise. That's not even what I would think about. I'm not sure what I would say. If I have a concussion, I might try to order like a Whataburger from you. I don't know. But like, I would not be yelling truth will rise. Anyway, he gets away and go over here so it'll work. He again continues to publish against Baylor. He tones it back a little bit though. But really, one of his supporters gets into a gunfight with two other men. Again, the guns associated with that. Brann's Colt 41, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. It's in there. Brann's friends, people either really love him or really don't. They get into a gunfight. A couple of guys get killed over it. Another guy gets shot again. In fact, you have several people dead from this whole thing before it's over. And by early winter 1898, it's obvious that tensions have grown. Brann's been in town for 4 years. That's it. Well, 5 if you count 94. So 94, 5, 6, 7, 8. So kind of 5, but really 4 years. He's been in town for 4 years, and look what's happened. He is also known to be a good speaker, so he starts going across the country, and he has other speaking tours lined up. Like, he has dates lined up. And on April the 2nd, he's supposed to be in San Antonio giving a lecture. But he's reluctant to leave because he doesn't want to be branded a coward. But he also realizes that almost getting killed twice is probably not a good idea. So he decides, I'll dial it back, I'll get out of town for a while, I'll make some money on a speaking circuit, I'll come back to Waco. And there he is. Oh, this is a telegraph from Western Union that he actually had sent to his wife Carrie when he was in Vicksburg. It's dated in February of 1898. I think it's like February the 10th or so. Yeah, it's hard for me to read. But February and he says, 15. And he says, in Mississippi, had a great audience here tonight. Be home Wednesday morning, all well, W.C. Brann. And he has it sent to his wife. Like he's out on speaking tour, he's doing a good job, he's enjoying things. But on April the 1st, that's when everything goes down. Brann is going to buy a ticket to go on a speaking tour when Tom Davis sees him, and he says that whenever I see that Brann, I'm going to shoot him. And he does. Guy just walks across the street and pop, pop, shoots Brann. Punctures his lung, shoots him right where the suspenders cross in the back. Brann, who before hadn't even owned a gun, was loaned one. If I recall that correctly, I can ask Mr. Lentz that question, because he'll know. Turns around and pulls out the Colt 41 revolver that you see in there and kills Davis in the street. Brann, after being shot, goes to the police station, gives a statement while shot, while bleeding out, gives a statement of what happens, where he then is taken home and dies. He's buried in the front corner of Oakwood, where there's nobody else at that time. So if you go to Oakwood and you look where Brann's grave is, there was nobody there at that period. He's way over in the front corner. The iconoclast continues for about 6 months or so-ish, but it struggles and then it begins to fold. His wife and his friend who tries to run at the judge get into some scuffles, and it just folds over. Okay, so that's sort of a quick nutshell of where we're at. Sorry, I need some Waco elixir. It's better. So I say, okay, that's the story we're most familiar with, for the most part. Who is this guy? Where does he come from? Why is he so angry? Like, before 1894, who was this guy? Like, where does he come from? And if he's the villain in all this story, every story does have a villain, and every villain has a story. Yeah. So who is Brann? Well, first off, what would Freud say? Well, first thing we do is look at Brann's mother. Right? It's my best Freud accent. What do we know about Brann's mother? That she died. When he was 2 years old, she dies. He grows up really without having his mother. Now, he is in foster care, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, but he never knew his mother. Okay, so Freud would come back. What about his father? Sorry, it's the best I can do. His father is Noble Jerome Brann. Noble Jerome Brann, he has another child first with his wife, Nancy, in 1851, who dies in 1889. That's Brann's full-blood sister. He has a second child, William Cowper, on the 4th of January, 1855, and he loses his wife, the mother to both kids, in 1857. That truly, at this point, is all I know about his mom. Well, he served as a minister. He also served as a sergeant in the 1st Illinois Infantry. I believe it's Company G. And he moves to Rochelle, Illinois. He remarries in about 1866 to a lady named Angeline. Angeline is also a war widow whose first husband had died in Arkansas of typhoid. And Angeline dies later in 1892, but they are married in about 1866. So hold on to that date. He dies in 1907, and he's buried in the Danville National Cemetery in Illinois with a soldier's tombstone. Okay. So Brann and his sister, what we know is he gets put into foster care. His father, not really knowing what to do with a 2-year-old and about a 7 or so year old girl, instead entrusts it to some of the people that are in his church, the Hawkins. And Brann lives there for quite a while, till he's about 10 or 11. And they have a son who's about his age, and they all apparently kind of get along. I mean, Brann never really speaks ill of him. In fact, in later letters that he has with his father, which I'll show you here in a few minutes, he's still talking fondly about, oh, the Hawkins say hi, I haven't seen them in a while. They're still asking about each other. But after the war, in about 1866 or 1867, William Cowper runs away. He puts all his stuff in a box in a little knapsack, and he just decides he's had it. He hates farm life, and he's never coming back. Just like a pouty kid, right? Notice, though, what years does he run away? 1866 to 1867, somewhere in there. When did his dad remarry? So I'm going to use a little bit of frog DNA to make a dinosaur here. And that's dangerous, as we know, because we've all seen Jurassic Park. But his dad leaves him in foster care, even with people that he loves. Then his dad remarries after the war, which he clearly was serving in. So Brann either A, didn't want to move in with his dad and is mad that now his dad wants to have a whole nother family and he's been shoved over here, or B, he just thinks he's too big for his britches at that point and he just wants to leave. Fair? So, he just runs away. No, nothing. He's out. Humboldt, Illinois isn't exactly a thriving metropolis. Even now, Humboldt, Illinois, like when you pull it up on Google Maps and Google Street View, not every street even has a street view in it. It's that little. There's nothing out there. Humboldt, Illinois is part of Cole County, Illinois. It's founded in 1830. It's largely Irish Catholic. Who does Brann always rag on? How about that? German immigrants? The German population mostly supported abolitionism. The Irish Catholics were mostly copperheads. For all you nerds out there, what are copperheads? Do you know? They are snakes, but a copperhead at this point in American politics refers to a certain kind of person. They are Northerners who are sympathetic to the Southern cause. They get their name because somebody, in an early act of terrorism and an assassination attempt, mails 2 live copperheads to President Lincoln, hoping he will open them on his desk and be bitten by them and die. So, it comes from northern states that are sympathetic to Southern causes. Now, this doesn't mean, again, they might not necessarily care as much about the slave issue, but there's a difference in saying that I'm an abolitionist and saying I believe in equal rights. There's a difference in saying you're not a slave and in saying you're equal to me. Big difference there. Copperheads are aggressive in that they're still Democrats who support more the ideas of states' rights, hostile to Lincoln, and that's an area that was very popular in Humboldt County, Illinois, or Humboldt, Illinois, Cole County, excuse me. So, over time, the county shrunk and actually added additional spots to it. The population grows post-war. And then they moved to Rochelle, which is located about 85 miles west of Chicago. I don't know why I didn't put Chicago up there, but there you go. Rochelle is where Noble really puts his roots down the most. And I don't know a whole lot of what happens to Brann between about 1866 and 67 to about 77. But I do know he ends up back in Rochelle, most likely living with his father. Click. So, I kind of spoiled this one just a little bit. What else had happened in 1866 and 1867 to Brann's family? His dad got remarried, right? He was hitting that point where he's about 12 or 13 and he thinks he's a man, but he's not quite a fully grown adult yet, and he leaves. Where had his father been? Well, he was in the war, so he was gone. But where had he been before the war? Had he gone by the Hawkins as frequently? Had he not? I don't know. But Brann had been in foster care. Think about how you'd feel in that situation. And your dad just shows up with some other lady now? Who's your stepmom? After leaving you for 10 years in foster care? I'm not saying they were hostile, I don't know. But I know how I would feel. What would post-war Humboldt Rochelle have been like? Again, these were sites where copperheads were. Probably a pretty antagonistic place. A place that likes agriculture. So why run away? And when he does run away as a boy, where does he go? Most likely, St. Louis. Why would St. Louis be one of the most perfect places for you to go in 1866 or 1867? Yes, sir, that's exactly right. Railroads, riverboats. It's the gateway to the West. If you wanted to forget all about what had just happened for the last 4 years in the United States, you'd go to St. Louis. Because St. Louis is where you jump off. There's a reason why the Gateway Arch is there. Because it's the gateway to the West. And the West is where everything new is now. Forgetting all those struggles, all that, the past conflicts and war. Everyone's so sick of war. St. Louis is step one to leaving. But Brann eventually goes back to Rochelle. Because he's a kid. When he runs away, he's a teenager. I mean, he wouldn't even be old enough to drive right now. But we know he comes back to Illinois. And when he gets there, I call it Return of the Brann. For all you 90s fans who know the song Return of the Mac, Return of the Brann. While he's there, he meets a very young, well, I say very young, like she's marrying age, Carrie Bale Martin, who he falls in love with. This is a picture of her at about age 18. She had grown up in Iowa, as best I can tell, and had moved to close to an area around Rochelle, and William Cowper meets her and falls in love with her. And he begins to court her. In fact, he starts writing her little love notes all the time. Yeah, and I'll do my best. It says, I regret that I cannot be with you Sunday evening as I had anticipated. It is really too bad to be kept away. I wonder if the little girl will miss me. Flirting with her. With highest regards, W.C. Brann. Over here, we'll call you. Notice 1876. We'll call you Wednesday evening with your permission. Respectfully yours, Will. My father signed Will. Right there. So he's living with his dad. He and his dad at least patch things up. His dad's messing with his little notes where he's trying to hit on this girl. And it works. They get married. 3rd of March, newlyweds. He starts referring to her as his little sunshine. And he starts sending her different notes. And they do. They get married. Here's another one that, again, it's hard to read up there. Dear wife and baby, from Harry. Harry? Who's Harry? That's him. It's William Cowper. One of the things his wife called him was Harry. And he called her Midget. He did. Called her Midge for short. So you'll start seeing Dear Midge. Signed Harry. In this one they talk about dear wife and baby. Yeah, newsflash, he has a baby too. 9.5 months after they get married, they have their first child, Inez. I mean, these don't waste any time. All right, update from Harry to Midge. This one's a little bit later, and though it's hard for you to read it, I almost want to go back over there and read some of these to you. It says the Texas Iconoclast on the top. This one's from 1892, so it's later. This is when he's in Austin and things are failing. But I still just wanted to show you yours, Harry, to Midge. Okay. We also have letters from his father to him. Letters from Noble to Will. And they're quite nice, actually. He talks about saying, tell Midge this. His dad calls her Midge too. Tell Midge this. How's Grand Dot doing? Dot is his granddaughter, Inez, who they call Dottie. Dottie is Brann's oldest daughter. And at the time this letter's written, she's probably about 8 or 9 years old. And they always refer to her, again, as Dot. Tell Grand Dot I said hi. There it is, N.J. Brann, right there. Always remain your father. He talks about how he'd seen the Hawkins and hoped they were doing well, and how he wants them to come up and stay for a while. Click. More of the same. But this is what he talks about. See how much he wants to see his Grand Dot, which is his granddaughter. See, I have not seen Midge or Dottie. I love them both. That's Brann's father. So again, apparently, they do put things back together somewhere. Speaking of, though, Dottie. Her name is Inez, but here's a letter that she wrote to him. Down here, though you can barely see it, it's got like 2 papa. Has little hearts drawn around it, little flowers. Talking about how someone had helped fix her shoe. How great it was. Talking about how a mama had helped fix her shoe. All these different things that, hold on, that her sister had made her do, which we'll get to that in a second. Here's her report card, too. This is Dottie's report card from 4th grade. They're living in Houston at this time. The thing I found kind of ironic, and not to be judgy here, a little ironic, in writing she didn't pass. But no, she's super smart. Look at that. Hundreds. She makes A's and B's in virtually everything. She just must have had a rough time. Or like me, just forgot to turn something in. Then they have Gracie, their other daughter, who they call Tot. Gracie's born in 1886 when they're in Galveston. She adores her older sister Gracie. Gracie adores her older sister Dottie. But on the 25th of July, 1890, Brann and Dottie get into a huge argument. Apparently, Dottie's a bit of a looker. And though she's young, Dottie begins to get the attention of this boy that lives down the street, who she says she doesn't know. And William Cowpers comes home and he's mad. And he's like, the little guy's hanging outside. He's like, leave some flowers for Dottie. And being annoyed with her, he says, who is this little creep who haunts our house? Tell this little fool to go away. Tell the boy to go away. And she's like, Dad, I don't know who he is. He's like, no, you're lying to me. You're lying to us. Carrie, our daughter lies to us. They have a huge fight. And Dottie becomes completely distraught over it. And decides to respond. This is where they're staying in Houston at the time. This isn't their house. This is about 2 blocks away and about 8 years later. But just to kind of give you a context of where they are in Houston. Dottie's reply is to take the entire vial of morphine in the cabinet and kill herself. This is Dottie's suicide note at 12 years old. Here, I'll read it to you. I'll go back here and make sure I can read it. What it says, which I can still struggle to see. Hold on. I have to make it bigger. All right, dear Mama, tomorrow, by this time, I'll be dead. I took all of that morphine. I don't want to live. I can never be as good as you want me to be. I was born a rowdy, and you would be ashamed of me. I hope God will take me to heaven. Goodbye. I will see you, Papa. I'm sorry I can't make it all out just now. But give all my love, my things to Todd. And give all my things to Gracie. Goodbye forever. Then she comes back and she writes on the outside of the letter too. By this point, the morphine's kicking in is the best thing that we can figure out. Because look at her handwriting. From Dot to Mama, goodbye. And she goes into the hammock in the backyard and goes to sleep. They find her hours later. She's already cold. And she's gone. And Brann can't take it. There's an article where they talk about a crushing blow. It runs in the paper. Tells the story. You can find it on findagrave.com. The neighbors came with all speed, bent every muscle, and directed every thought. The life was not extinct until about 8 o'clock in this evening. It was a terrible blow. Funeral will take place tomorrow. You want to know what's even worse? He doesn't have money to bury her. This is $20, a $20 burial plot in the Houston Cemetery Company, which is about $700 in today's money. And William Cowper doesn't have enough money to even bury his daughter. He instead has to wire his dad. I was in Houston last week, just by coincidence, down there for a conference. And after the conference was over, I went by Glenwood Cemetery. Glenwood Cemetery is the final resting place of Dottie Brann. And I asked them to pull up where she was buried. I wanted to see her grave. I had heard about it, but I knew this was coming up. I thought it would be important to share the whole story. So the lady at the front desk, I called them a little bit ahead of time so that they knew, and calls me back and says they have no record of a Dottie Brann or an Inez Brann at all in Glenwood Cemetery. The only Brann they have a record of is one J.N. Brann. I'm guessing that should be NJ for Noble Jerome, his father, who paid the $20 because Brann didn't have any money. So imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine the fact that you have an argument with your young preteen who decides to take her own life after an argument with you, and then you don't even have the money to bury her. You're so broke. They bury her in a section referred to as Stranger's Rest. Stranger's Rest because they buy individual plots at one time. And she's in the old Stranger's Rest. You want to know what else? She doesn't have a tombstone either. In fact, when I went there, they could not tell me specifically where Dottie Brann is buried. What they could tell me is a general vicinity. But to quote the receptionist at the front, it's just a patch of grass. Not that she didn't care, just that we don't know. There's roughly 200 people buried in this section, and Dottie Brann doesn't have a marker. Because in this whole section right here, this is where people were buried who were either strangers to each other, people that were just sort of individuals. And they were the cheapest plots. They're also dealing with major erosion issues on the back section. Like the ravine's steep back there. And they've got it walled off. But Old Stranger's Rest with the ravine right next to it. So Brann can't handle it. He's in Houston, he's working for the Post, and he already is struggling to deal with people there. But like, think about it, he They won't even give him an advance to bury his daughter. Instead, what does he have to do? He has to wire his dad to get money. It's not too long after that, they decide that they want to have another child. And Carrie becomes pregnant again with their son. They're living in and out of boarding houses. They're moving around. And in 1892, roughly 18 months after the death of Dottie, they have William Carlisle. So, after they leave Houston, because they just can't take it anymore, he takes a job working in Austin. And when he's in Austin, he instead, in his grief, doubles down on his work. And he decides, what I'm going to do is start my own newspaper. I'm smart enough to do it. I know I can pull it off. I'm going to start my own publication where I just speak my mind. And I'm going to call it the Texas Iconoclast. Remember that first note I showed you at the beginning when he was sending a letter to Midge? What does it say? Texas Iconoclast in the top corner. And it bombs. Nobody cares. He's in Austin, Texas, writing about all these different populist things. Writing, I think that's my next slide. Writing about like populist topics like bimetallism. Again, he tries to keep his dream going, but nobody cares. And he goes totally bankrupt, even beyond what he already was. He has no money. He works for different newspapers in Austin and in San Antonio, and he struggles. His family moves around. He might move ahead of them, then come back. But he starts to earn a mild reputation as a public speaker. And so he starts doing lecture circuit and doing some stuff. Talking about really populism. It's also, just for fun, that you know, Texas Iconoclast does fail, and he sells his press and a lot of different rights to a friend of his who starts up one called the Rolling Stone. Not that one, a different one. And the friend he sells it to is William Sidney Porter, who you know as, that's right, O. Henry, before he goes to jail. Hey man, taxes, they get you. Yeah, every single time. So, late summer 1894, we see a man who is penniless, who is dealing with grief, who is trying to figure out who he even is, who knows that he's smart, who knows that he's good at stuff, but constantly finds himself working for people that he thinks are beneath him. He has struggled to maintain employment virtually anywhere he goes. And he immediately decides, when he gets back into Waco, Texas, I'm going to try the Iconoclast again. I think there's a ton of good material here. Oh, and by 1895, the Apostle is born. And arguably, Slattery is the father. In a matter of just a few years, he begins to embrace this sort of alter ego, the apostle. Someone who he can completely roast all these topics. Which, again, I go back to, what if Slattery just ignored him? What if Slattery had never engaged in that night? And I realize, I've read E.H. Carr too, what happens when you start dealing with what ifs in history? You go crazy. But I can't help but challenge you, what if? Oh. In 1895, he's so proud of his iconoclasts, he binds them all up, and he gives a whole set to Carrie. Mrs. Carrie B. Brann from W.C. Brann. It's a gift just for her. His finest work, something he's actually proud of. For the first time ever, he actually has done something. He's actually achieving something. He's failed at so many different things. And now suddenly, as the apostle, he can do so much. They buy a house. 5 years ago, he can't even afford a cemetery plot. And now they're buying that house. Suddenly, it's like he's finally gotten his big break, but at what cost? I mean, they buy that. They go from living in boarding houses to that. It's like you hit the lottery. So going back to the beginning of our story, where we started and joined it already in progress, this is where we join it. It's like there's two Branns. There's the person who's a husband and a father who is scared of failing. Because you see, he has failed at tons of stuff. And then there's the apostle, a feared Uberman and alter ego. It's like he unleashes everything. And in doing that, he finds this power. He finds this thing that helps stuff some of that pain that he obviously has down. So, Brann the person. He couldn't stay run away even as a kid. He had to come back to his dad. He had to come back even after he ran away. He couldn't make it work as a bellhop. He couldn't make it work as a painter's assistant. He couldn't make it work as a grainer. He couldn't make it work as a railroad worker, as a farmer, as an opera house manager. He even tried pitching baseball. Doesn't work. He even tries as a reporter, and what does he always do? He gets fired, right? Couldn't make it as an independent journalist. He constantly had to sell the iconoclast. He couldn't make things work. It keeps going. He couldn't buy a house. He couldn't put down roots. Is he trying to earn his father's respect? Is he feeling the fact that he never knew his mom? He has no financial investments. He's constantly forced out of self-publishing. He can't seem to make his way into an editorial position. He's living in and out of rentals. He blames himself for the death of Dottie. He doesn't have enough money to bury her. Couldn't even get an advance. Had to ask for it. Can't afford a headstone. That's Brann the guy. But Brann the apostle. He's infamously known by his words, his stature. Look at him sitting proudly at that desk. He's feared by authority figures who wouldn't have even thought twice about who he was before. He's financially successful. He's a viral influencer with nearly 100,000 paying readers. I mean, it's unbelievable. It'd be like having millions of followers on Twitter today. It would. He's powerful. He's respected. And his persona grows to this mythic, legendary proportion. It's the reason why you're even here tonight. 130 years later, still, this myth of William Brann lives on. It's the apostle. And it's that same epic legend status that gets him shot. But I also include Harry. See, Carrie's terrified of the fact that this guy that she clearly loves, going through all these different things, she sticks by him. And she's worried she's going to lose her Harry. I mean, think about it. They almost lynch him. They beat him up. They almost kill him twice. And whenever asked about how they'll probably kill him, he's like, yeah, they'll probably get me someday. Talking about it like it's just off the cuff. This is life and death. How do you think Carrie feels about that? She asked him to tone it back. But Brann in this role of the apostle, man, he just can't let it go. So much pain of all this other failure. So much stuff. That again, the legend of the apostle creates this almost mythic proportion. What happened to all the apostles? I know I got some good Baptists in here. Did the apostles have very nice ends? Oh, one of them. But the rest of them? Every one of them was killed, right? For what they believed in? Well, what happens to the Brann family after this? After William Cowpers is murdered, what happens? For a long time, I didn't know. Carrie, this is a picture of her playing around, and I think it's in a smaller one. I zoomed it in. She's hiding out in some like giant plants. She appears in the 1900 census in Waco, so she doesn't leave. She likely stayed around for a while. The 1910 census, she's nowhere to be found. But in 1920, she turns up again in North Hollywood, California. Yeah, that's right. She does eventually move to Oklahoma with her family, but she relocates again. She dies in 1929, just a little bit before the stock market crash, and she's buried in Valhalla Cemetery, North Hollywood, California. Who, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where Oliver Hardy is buried too, isn't it? I think so. Yeah. Gracie Gertrude, the surviving daughter. She moves with her mother in different places. I don't know as much about her, but she does die in 1916 at 31 years of age. But I believe that she marries and has 2 kids. I think that's right. In this picture, she's about 20 years of age. William Carlisle, Billy, he becomes a Presbyterian minister. He moves to Lawton, Oklahoma, then North Hollywood. And it's likely that his mother and sister probably follow him. His mother definitely did. And he has descendants everywhere. I told you I was going to point you out. Told you I was going to point you out. He has descendants everywhere. He dies in May of 1948, and he is also interred at Valhalla. Valhalla is right next to the Hollywood Burbank Airport. Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you? What happened to the Brann family? North Hollywood, California. But it also makes a lot of sense when you think about it. This was a picture that I think was from Carrie's scrapbook that I wanted to include. It's really faded. It's hard to read. There's 4 people sitting in the front. I'm not sure who they are. I'm going to guess they're grandkids. But as soon as you opened up that book, it's right there in the front corner. It's the thing she was the happiest and the most proud of. And I just thought it was beautiful and wanted to add it. So, I got one more plot twist for you. That's a pun, by the way. In 1923, Carrie purchases 3 additional plots in Oakwood Cemetery, our Oakwood Cemetery, right next to her husband. And she pays about $175 per plot for each one, which in today's money is about $3,200. She's been gone for 30 years. And suddenly in 23, she decides that she wants to buy the plots next to William Cowpers. And she buys 3. Why 3? So I mean, one for her. But maybe. But he already had his own family. Maybe, right? Well, you actually know. I don't know. So this is just me using frog DNA again, which is dangerous. I wonder if she thought about trying to have Dottie moved. I don't know. But the big question remains, why 3? And then where is she actually buried? California. So those 3 plots remain unused. Though we can fix that. No, that's not a threat. That is not a threat. Okay. So, I just want to show you another thing that when I was preparing for this lecture that I thought was kind of ironic. So I show you again pictures of Dottie's unmarked grave. And again, I took these on Friday, like this past Friday, around lunchtime. So Dottie is somewhere about in here. That's where the eroded ravine is, right there. She's somewhere about in here. They think. As I was leaving, I was driving out, and I noticed some Texas historical markers. So I stopped and looked at one. And this is the gravesite of Reverend Tryon. Does anyone in here know who Reverend William Tryon was? What? Huh? That's exactly right. He was the first president of Baylor's board. They almost named Baylor Tryon instead of Baylor.
He was one of the founders of Baylor. He was one of the very first ones to sign on the charter. And buried right next to Dottie Brann is a Baylor administrator. Just like in Oakwood Cemetery, buried right next to William Cowper, one block or so over, Rufus Burleson. Even in Houston. So I want to take very quickly and give some iconoclastic shout-outs. First, to Dr. Donald Brann. Thank you so much. Y'all gave me so much stuff that I can talk about to really help bring him to life, and I hope honor and do things well. To Carla Pendergraft, who had done some amazing great work that she let me use working into this. To Clint Lynch for hooking me up and letting me meet you and talking to me. To Waco Texas collection for kind of helping me last minute because, you know, do tomorrow, right? Not really, but still. To Eric Swanson here at Historic Waco. To Glenwood Cemetery and the lady at the front desk, her name was Catherine. That's all she would tell me. She was also super annoyed because I talked to her like 4 times, and every time I called her back, I was like, I don't think that's right. Dr. Amber Bracken for helping me pronounce stuff. For Andrea for listening to my ideas. Hey, she's back there. For my mom for listening. And for y'all all. Which, by the way, Andrea told me that y'all all isn't a thing. She said that y'all, like you all, but you all is like y'all. And y'all all. So you all. I think she's wrong, but she wanted to just clarify that.
It's all y'all.
Yeah, y'all all, but you can't say you all. That doesn't make any sense. So you'd say y'all all, which does. So y'all all as well. I'm not William Cowpers Brann. He would have a better word and a better way of putting it. I'm doing my best, okay? I'm doing my best. So I now ask, do you have any questions? And I'll do my best. Yes?
Just curious, you mentioned several times that he was afraid of failing again. Where does that come from versus maybe he was a narcissist and it was always somebody else's fault?
Which is also fair. But deep down in many narcissists, it's also because they're afraid. So, I mean, he may not, in some cases, I don't know, I can't psychoanalyze the dead. But I can just, in my own approach, even narcissists, though, they're even more scared in some ways of failure. They're more scared of being found out. I mean, every picture you see, granted, it costs equivalent now of $50 to $200 to get a photograph made in that day. Every photograph, he's always dapper. Hair's always just right. Bow tie's just right. Vest, whatever. And again, he doesn't have a lot of money, but bow tie. Vest, just right. I don't totally know, but I just know, like me as Brad the guy, if I had experienced that many setbacks, I would personally feel like a failure, whether or not I truly was.
Maybe you had read some writings he had written where he said, I cannot fail again or something like that.
No, I haven't come across them. It doesn't mean they're not there. I haven't come across them. Again, I use some frog DNA here. So, I mean, I may not have an authentic tyrannosaur. I definitely have something that could eat me alive, though, if I'm not careful. But, so again, I could be off with it. Because, again, that's the danger of using a little bit of frog DNA in there, is it doesn't mean I'm right. But, seems right in my head. But y'all all, like y'all all. All y'all. Yeah, all y'all. All y'all. Eureka! All y'all! Y'all are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Hi! Any other... I'm sorry, that's my favorite joke, is to wave back. I'll get to you in just a second. I'll do my best.
Considering the way he grew up, how do you account for the mastery of the language and the way he used it?
He is a super nerd. The only thing I can think of is and again, frog DNA here, I admit to you, frog DNA. The only thing I can think of is he could read and write, and he always was reading, is the only thing I can think of. Constantly reading. Constantly reading. Any book he could get a hold of, anything he could do. Because also keep in mind, reading was the mark of upper class. Brann knew he was poor. He knew he didn't want to be poor. He wanted to achieve something. He wanted to become the apostle. And the more at that time, books were a luxury. Books were something, reading in particular, was this sort of mark of someone who was well-to-do. And I would venture to guess he was just a nerd and read everything he could get his hands on. He also, and again, I'm guessing here, probably wanted to escape. I mean, he obviously ran away once. He probably was wanting to escape in other ways so he'd read a lot. But that's just my guess. And again, that's dangerous. But so am I. Just a second. I'll get to you. Does that?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Hold up. Behind you, and then you. Hold up. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I need to pick a number system like when you pay your taxes. But Porter, he didn't pay his.
Rather than guess, in the 1957 book, it says, during his long years of journalism apprenticeship, Brann somehow found time to give himself a liberal literary education. While covering the hotel beat for one newspaper, he discovered Shakespeare. He mixed the courthouse run for another paper with a study of Carlyle's essay. He discovered the stately paragraphs of Macaulay. He thrilled to the exhortations of Montaigne. He even made a brief incursion into writing drama. In February 1889, he registered 3 plays for the Library of Congress: Cleon, That American Woman, and Retribution.
That's Carver's book. Yeah, that's Carver's book. That's right. That's right. I told y'all when I started, I got an educated audience. Yeah, he did. He's tried his hand as a playwright too. I didn't put that up there. He tried his hand as a playwright. The only one of them actually went to stage.
You know, I found it unusual that as an editorial writer for the Galveston Daily News, then called the Galveston News, he made $25 a week. When I started with him in 1967, I made $75 a week, so he was doing really good.
I like that. Thank you very much for referencing that. I appreciate you. Did you still have a question, sir?
I'm sure, because I'm very curious about who his followers are, because I have a very eccentric, really eccentric, great-grandfather who was a pallbearer at his funeral.
Oh, wow.
According to that book.
Oh.
Anyway, so how would you describe who his followers were? Who was buying his subscriptions? How did that get his mechanics?
So that's a great question. Who were his followers and who was paying for this stuff? The answer is everybody, even people who didn't like him. Because even if you don't like him, you need to know what he's saying. You may not want your name on his subscription list, but you're going to use an alias or have your neighbor or something buy it. So like Rufus Burleson, whether or not he likes William Cowpers Brann, has to read what's in the iconoclast. And the only way to read it is to buy one or to get one. And that right there is part of the success of the apostle. Is if you want to know what I'm saying, because it's going to be razor sharp, you got to read it. So even if you just borrow one from a friend, that friend is still paying him. He's still making money to insult you. It's brilliant to a point. But it also feeds into that alter ego. It really gets it. So his readers are everybody. People who support him and agree with what he's saying, as well as people who might not, just because they need to know what is he saying in there. Same way you might follow people online you don't necessarily like. You just want to know what's being said. Only he makes money off of it.
Which is the mechanics when he sent out a mail. You have to be
So I'm guessing whenever all these speakers like Slattery and Talmadge start referencing him, that's what gives him that legitimacy. So when I go back to, let's take Slattery for example. If Slattery had never mentioned Brann in speech, would most of the people in the gallery ever even known about the iconoclast or thought to reference it or read it? They may have heard about this guy who's saying all these printing these diatribes or whatever, but they might not have ever read them. But when Slattery starts talking about, oh brothers, there's someone in your community you need to know about, then they all have to go buy one and read it. They're like, okay, well, who is it? And then he stands up in the audience and starts yelling at him. It's at that point, like, everyone, though they might all disagree with him, need to know what's Slattery talking about. So that's why I say, is Slattery the father of the apostle in that situation? Like, is he the one who really gives it that energy? That's the best I got.
This is logic what you say, hold up today, of his position.
Okay, now that's a rough one right there.
We can't hear his question.
Oh, what his logic hold up today? Well, like, what do you mean? Like, to
His
engage?
positions, would they still be logically defendable?
So, he was a man of his time. He was a man of his time, and many of the things that he said now, I mean, they got him shot for a reason, even back in his day. I think what it is we want him to have said things that he didn't say, and instead what begins to happen is we want, in a way, to champion him as an underdog. We want to root for him. We want him to do well. We like seeing hypocrisies exposed, even if he doesn't reference his own that much. But let's also let his writings stand for what they are, which is how he felt about stuff, some of which I agree with and some of which I don't. And so it's leaving those things as they are. That's the best political answer I'll give you as an elected official in a local government. Sir, thank you. You had your hand up several times. Yeah.
Yeah, so what was Hawkins' motivation behind killing?
So that depends on who you ask. Why did Tom Davis shoot him? So Carver has one explanation. Part of it is he had a close association with Baylor. He felt like he was doing a chivalrous thing. Truly, he checks all the boxes off as just being a terrorist in that situation. It's just somebody who just, when he said, when I see that guy, I'm going to kill him. And I think feeling like he's being chivalrous for defending something. When, in fact, he's just being a cold-blooded murderer. I mean, again, it's that mythic proportion of the apostle. He sees something, this foreigner, like they constantly refer to Brann as this Yankee who comes in and sort of this foreigner who challenges everything. And Davis's motivation is just to try to be a hero, is the best I can put together. Defending his daughter's honor.
Did Davis have a daughter at Baylor?
Did I know of? Yes, one. I think maybe two, but don't quote me on that. Like I said, I figure someone in here knows. And it's really what gets Davis riled up, I believe, is the Ministers and Magdalene's comment, which is where he says that Baylor University is a manufactory of ministers and Magdalenes, which is, of course, a reference to Mary Magdalene saying that it's he's calling them prostitutes. And so it's, again, it sells papers, and it also catches lead. What's that? Yeah, that's right. That's right. The only problem with Baptists is when you baptize them, you don't hold them underwater long enough, or something like that. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Undiapered babes. Bailey Boy. Yeah, that's another famous one from him. And Antonia Teixeira, thank you. And her 3-pound diploma is what he refers to the baby as. And comment, yeah.
Yeah, that's what Reed Brooks revolvers and religion after his guitar beaten out of him. His arm is broken.
It is a good one.
Limping away on his heart, on his carriage.
Yeah, and what is he yelling?
That truth.
Truth will rise. He's limping away.
It's the lamp of truth that is now
That's right. That's right. Which I guess it skipped it. I had pictures of that one up. And I guess it skipped it in my clicker.
Not to mention the hole in the temple where somebody.
That's right, where they shot him.
Shot him with a 45. And you still see the divot.
Yeah, Saturday I'll be doing storytellers there, and I'll be doing Brann's story.
Yeah, somebody really choose
It was right after. It was right after it was put in place too. That they shot at the temple on the side.
If you look way over the cemetery set up, you have all the big names like Lacey and
Yeah.
Burleson, all them right in the center of the cemetery. All bad boys are all on the outside.
Yeah, Brann's way over here. And before other things would have been added, it'd have been easy to go to at night and go visit Brann's grave in the evening and shoot it with a gun.
My family members are born in the middle.
Oh.
Then it happens that she wishes Brann hate.
Well, all right. I think we should go ahead and kind of. Of course, I'll take one from you, and after that, we'll call it and we'll head out in there. And then, if you have other stuff you want to kind of ask me about, I'll do my best. Yeah, Clint.
I have it on good authority because extra cemetery spaces
Yes.
might be for sale.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, like I said, we might be able to hook you, and I told you that's not a threat. It's not a threat that you might be able to help put them to use. That's not a threat, especially with the lecture on Brann. All right. Thank y'all so much. Again, I'll go ahead and pass the mic back to you. Thank you.
Folks, I think we witnessed something very special tonight. This was, without a doubt, one of the greatest lectures I've seen. So we'll get another round of applause, please. If you have any additional questions, you will be here up the front. And then we have snacks outside. And be sure to check out the guns as well, courtesy of David Lintz and the bread vendors. And thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it.